All right, Emma, thanks so much for being on the Friends with Wheels podcast. First off, tell the audience a little bit about you and how you started, and we can go from there.
Hi, I'm Emma Scalzo. I use she, her pronouns, and I lead the Balance Our Tax Code Coalition, which is a group of about 100, over 100 organizations advocating for a more equitable tax code here in Washington State. So it kind of ranges from like housing and human service providers to labor unions to kind of like community-based nonprofits. It's a large group and very diverse group with a lot of broad interests, but all care about evening out Washington's tax code.
What made you get into this work? What inspired you to do this?
Yeah, well, I actually originally heard about Balance Our Tax Code when I was working in affordable housing here in King County. I was working for a group called the Housing Development Consortium that really helps bring people together, similar like to a coalition, to advocate for and develop affordable housing. And so I heard about Balance Our Tax Code, and at the time I was like, kind of confused because tax policy, and I was like, how does this relate to affordable housing? And then after like learning more and like engaging with the work, I realized like, oh my gosh, progressive revenue and our tax structure is everything in a lot of different, and it really impacts a lot of different sectors and our ability to build the communities we want here in Washington. So that was when I first heard about it. And then I've been on since like end of 2023.
Oh, that's a long time.
Mhm.
So, because I remember the person who connected with us said that you two met at an event. Is that right?
Yeah, let me review who connected us.
I think it was can't remember the name, but I had her as a guest on my show, and she has a YouTube channel called Coffee and Calculated or something like that, and she
Oh,
talks about policy and all that stuff.
was it Cassie from it?
Cassie, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, that's a real wonderful group that does a lot of good outreach for progressive revenue and like amazing coverage too on their blog.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that you and Cassie met at an event together. So like what was that like?
I think maybe we met at Budget Matters at the end of last year or possibly at our lobby day. So we hosted
Lobby day, that's what she said, yeah.
Okay, we hosted a lobby day, which was really exciting. It was on housing. We kind of did it in partnership with the a low-income housing alliance, and that's a group that does a lot of advocacy for affordable housing across Washington State. And so that's a really big day on campus because there's a ton of like hundreds of advocates advocating for affordable housing. And so it paired well to talk about progressive revenue at the same time. So we hosted a lobby day and brought down about like 150 people to Olympia, and we scheduled lawmaker meetings. And so people were able to connect with their representatives really early on in the legislative session to talk about affordable for progressive revenue and kind of what options we really wanted to see them take seriously for this year. And those three options were the millionaire's tax, obviously, but also the Well Washington Fund and the wealth tax. So,
Mm-hmm. And like when meeting Cassie at Lobby Day, what did you take away from her work? What is one thing that you learned meeting her at Lobby Day and learning more about her work?
well, there were so many folks at Lobby Day. It's kind of hard to pick out, but we
Mm-hmm.
represent such a big group of people with all different interests. So, like, it's really great just for everybody to get a chance to connect and remember like why we're all here and kind of all the different walks of life that took us to get here.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me a little bit about the work that you do at Balance Our Tax Code.
Yeah, so I run a coalition. It's a big group of people with a lot of different interests, but ultimately the one thing we are all passionate about is balancing Washington's tax code. Washington has mo one of the most regressive tax codes in the country. We are next to last, and that's largely because we rely really heavily on sales and property taxes to fund the things that we all use, like our roads and schools. So it's in everybody's best interest to really make sure that the wealthiest in our country, and in our state are paying what they truly owe. So that means finding new tools and new mechanisms in our tax code to really make sure that they are paying the same, if not more, than working folks.
And so what are some of the tools or things that you use to sort of make that happen, if I may ask?
Yeah, well, so the three main options that are on the table right now um, is there's currently in place a capital gains tax, which is derived from financial assets of the like sales of financial assets, so like your stocks and bonds, um, everything above $250,000. So it's people who are making really big sales on their capital gains, very large capital gains. And then the millionaire's tax, which just passed, is annual an annual tax on incomes above $1 million. So and it's like per household. So if you're making $101, you're gonna pay 90 nine cents or 10 cents on that dollar. But everything above $1 million. So you're not paying 10%, 9.9% on anything below that. And it doesn't include things like your home or your retirement fund or anything like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or a sale of a like small business. And it actually increases um, like the tax benefits for small businesses. Um, and then the other thing is the wealth tax, similar to the capital gains tax. It's a tax on extreme wealth, so folks that have financial assets that are gaining value, um, everything above a certain rate is taxed at a higher rate, which is will impact the highest income earners in our state. And then there's also the high earner payroll tax on employers or the Well Washington Fund, and that is on corporations, which is really like we're really passionate about because I'll get into it later, but we're really passionate about it because it's a tax on corporations in our state, which are some of the most wealthy corporations in the world. And it is a rate that it kind of closes a tax loophole that they benefit from that for high salary earners. So people like your CEOs or your executives that are making uh, above like 120, $160,000 a year. It's a tax on the corporations that are paying them. Um, and so it doesn't impact like their salaries, but it is a really good opportunity to tax the corporations that have a lot of wealth here in our state to give.
Mm-hmm. And so like in your role, like how do you sort of make sure that thing that the tax system is balanced, evenly so that like you said, people the high income earners pay their fair share and sort of that it doesn't sort of affect other groups or other people.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big things well, first thing, I have two policy shops that really do run the numbers of what makes the tax progressive. So, for instance, with the high salary payroll tax, um, that one, or the Well Washington Fund, that one is a proven tax that is harder to pass on to consumers. So, it's very unlikely to hit lower income earners. The other thing that it does, or the other thing that we really use as a tool to like measure progressivity is factoring it in folks' ability to pay. So if the tax takes into consideration folks like income level or where they live or their cost of living, that's usually a good indicator that it is progressive.
Mm-hmm. And what about I know you said that you were going to mention other types of taxes, so if you could unpack those.
Oh, well, on the Well Washington Fund, why it's so interesting and why we're so excited about it is because with the HR1 cuts that really impacted a lot of folks on Medicaid and our like healthcare system, even here in Washington, um, it also gave tax breaks to the highest income earners in our country and the highest grossing corporations in our state. So, what excites us about the Well Washington Fund is while folks are getting a huge tax break at the federal level, with the millionaires tax, we're able to make sure individuals are also contributing to our state so we can fund the things that we care about and hopefully backfill some of those federal cuts. And the same thing applies with Well Washington Fund to corporations, where corporations are benefiting from HR1 cuts. And we're able to bring that money into the state to pay for the things that are getting cut at the federal level,
Hmm.
people's healthcare.
Yeah. Thanks so much for breaking that down. This whole tax thing seems new to me, so I appreciate that.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
I'm happy to talk taxes. It's like it's very wonky, so I try to make it a little bit more digestible for folks.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So like what have you learned in doing this kind of work at Balance Our Tax Code? Is there anything that you sort of take away?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of my big learnings from this role is just like taxes impact everything, and taxes are a really important tool in democracy and like sustaining democracy. It really hits on all the things that we care about, like folks accessing good schools and having well-paid teachers. Everything that folks care about really, it all comes down to taxes. And so that was something that I didn't really think before I joined that folks could feel as passionately about. I also think like right now we're reckoning with a like how wealth is concentrated in our country and even more so in our state. And I think that that's and taxes are a really important tool in making sure that everybody has what they need and that we are like closing gaps and the middle class isn't disappearing. So when folks can afford affordable childcare and people can go to work, that's helpful for our middle class, and that's important to do through taxes. One of the things too I've really come to realize is that philanthropy isn't going to fix our problems. It's not going to fix our affordable housing shortage. It can do a lot, but it can't sustain in the same way our state can. So that's been, and same with like childcare and schools, like we really need sustainable forms of revenue to really make sure we're funding the things for a long term.
Hmm. And who was that sort of mentor that sort of helped you guide along your way to where you are today? Like, did you like who was that mentor that sort of said, maybe that this would be something to look into or tap into?
Yeah, well, I would say like the two folks that I really rely on is like our comms person, Rainey Cohen from Fuse, Washington. She's been a longtime tax advocate and she's really helped us figure out the storytelling that we should be doing with taxes because, I can talk about rates and thresholds and exemptions and all these things, but what is the story about the things that we're doing and the good that we're doing with tax reform? So, Rainey's an awesome messenger and really like cares about telling the story of taxes and really talking about all the good that tax reform does for our communities. And so, she's like fully been a huge mentor in that way. And then on the other side, my colleague Emily Van Enick, they have been so helpful in really creating like the organizational structure and coalition work that we've been doing, like really finding commonality and making sure we're all united and talking about the same things and really pushing the policies that will really have like the biggest impact. And Emily also championed the working families tax credit in its first form. So Emily's already had a huge impact on Washington State's tax code through her through their work as coalition lead in that way too.
That's cool. So like, is there anything that you would like to do in terms of like after in terms of something new? Like I know that you guys passed the millionaire tax, but is there anything on the horizon that you guys are doing that people should know about?
Well, the millionaire's tax fight isn't over. We still
Mm-hmm.
have a campaign to really, well, I shouldn't say we have a campaign necessarily. There's more and more indications that there's going to be a some sort of repeal of the millionaire's tax. So we're kind of ready, or at least kind of gearing up to make sure folks know why the millionaire's tax was actually super beneficial to working folks here in Washington State. So making sure we're educating our communities and really getting out ahead of any misinformation that the opposition will be sharing, especially in campaign world where there's a ton of ads that you could buy and, corporate and wealthy folks can really put a lot of weight behind and money into, like seemingly endless money into a repeal campaign. So we're really hoping that, or I think for the next steps, we're really making sure that the folks that we know and we care about are primed and ready to talk about all the good that the millionaire's tax will do. The other thing is that there's some legal challenges with it. It is a new tax. It's the first of its kind here in our state. And so there's going to be some legal challenges to making sure that it is crystal clear in terms of legality. But I think the bill is written in a way where it is a really strong version of it. So I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
pretty confident on both of those things, but we still need to be educating folks and working on spreading the good word of like what the millionaire's tax actually does.
Yeah,
Um,
keeping
and
people
then,
informed. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The other thing I think about is working with folks to really champion the next round of tax reform. So I kind of talked about like the Well Washington Fund and the wealth tax as being two really great options for progressive revenue here in Washington. One is a tax on corporations, the other one's a tax on really, really concentrated extreme wealth. So those are two options that we're still thinking about for the next few years. And then also we're kind of thinking about like what business tax reform could look like to help lower smaller businesses and middle-sized businesses in our state because they're impacted pretty heavily by our current B&O, our business tax. While some of the biggest corporations in our state have carve-outs and other kind of benefits for their companies. The other one would be property tax reform, making sure like property taxes are not uh, not ruining people's lives and making it hard to live in their communities, especially the communities they've lived in for a long time. So, really wanting to like explore what options we have to um, reform property taxes to make it more easy to live here in our state.
It's good that you mentioned property taxes because, oftentimes, people they're often complaining about, oh, I have to pay more in property tax to fund this service. So like, how do you sort of lower property taxes?
I think what would be the best, well, I think there's probably a lot of different avenues you can do. Like, for instance, one of the only kind of benefits we have right now in terms of property tax, progressive property taxes, is that there's a senior tax exemption. So seniors who have lived in their homes and own their homes can right. They're provided a tax exemption for their property taxes. One, that's a program that not a lot of folks know about, and two, we could do better. We could do things that factor in folks' ability to pay. So let's say folks are making under a certain income level, making a tax exemption for them, or making it easier to write off. Childcare, things like that, other things that you're putting the money towards your property taxes instead of another thing.
hmm And what can people do to sort of, like what how can, people um, you know, do the things that they're doing and sort of making, tax systems much more, fair and like being advocates in that effort.
Yeah, well, I mean, really educating folks on why you support a millionaire's tax, why you think wealthy folks should pay what they truly owe to our communities. I think that's a really important thing that we all can do in our day-to-day lives. But then, aside from that, I think uh, really thinking about all the good that your taxes do for yourself and the people around you, the people you love. I think that's a really important like message that we can all do. Otherwise, when you're talking with like, say you're an advocate for affordable housing or climate or, you know, women's rights, things like that, when you're talking about the things that you really care about, making sure that we're funding them through progressive revenue and talking to your lawmakers and talking to your friends about the benefits of progressive revenue. I think that's going to make a huge difference because people think that we support, you know, uh, like climate action here in our state, but we're facing those programs are facing huge budget cuts. People think we already have like great schools, and we do, but teachers are still having to pay for school supplies. So there's a lot of things that when you're championing the causes that you really care about, making sure that we're funding them and reminding our lawmakers that we want more progressive revenue to support the things that we're all working on.
And what can people do to find out more information about your work, or, like what can people do to find more information about what you're doing or your work?
Yeah, reach out. My name is Emma. My email is emma@balanceourtaxcode.com. We're always looking to add new organizations to our coalition. But also, if you're an individual advocate and want to get more involved, I encourage folks to follow us. We have a great TikTok and Instagram, and we're really trying to educate the masses, which has been really fun and engaging to do on social media.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to add your social media handles on the bottom of the show notes.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
All right. Okay.